The forest stood still, silent, menacing. It was as if the very air held its breath, waiting for something to break the eerie tranquility. The trees, ancient and towering, seemed to whisper secrets to one another, their leaves rustling softly in the gentle breeze. The forest was alive, but not in the way one might expect. It was a place of shadows and whispers, where the line between reality and nightmare blurred. Twisted branches like skeletal fingers clawed at the fading light. The sun, a mere sliver on the horizon, cast long, eerie shadows that danced and flickered, creating an almost hypnotic effect. The branches seemed to reach out, as if trying to grasp the last remnants of daylight, to pull it back into the depths of the forest. It was a sight both mesmerizing and terrifying, a reminder of the forest's untamed and wild nature. The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. Each breath was a struggle, the moisture in the air clinging to your skin, making it feel as though the forest itself was trying to pull you in, to make you a part of its dark, twisted world. The ground beneath your feet was soft and yielding, the decaying leaves and underbrush creating a carpet of rot and ruin. It was a place where life and death coexisted in a delicate, macabre balance. A shiver ran down your spine. It was an involuntary reaction, a primal response to the overwhelming sense of dread that permeated the air. Every step you took seemed to echo in the silence, the sound amplified by the oppressive stillness. You couldn't shake the feeling that you were being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking your every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Something was wrong here, very wrong. The forest, with its ancient trees and thick underbrush, seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. It was as if the very ground beneath your feet was alive, shifting and moving in response to your presence. The path ahead was shrouded in darkness, the trees closing in around you, creating a tunnel of shadows that seemed to stretch on forever. You couldn't shake the feeling that you were walking into a trap, that the forest itself was conspiring against you. At the heart of the woods stood a house. It was an old, decrepit structure, its once grand facade now crumbling and overgrown with ivy. The house seemed to exude a sense of foreboding, as if it held dark secrets within its walls. It was a place that had been forgotten by time, left to rot and decay in the heart of the forest. Yet, despite its dilapidated state, there was something undeniably captivating about it, something that drew you in despite the overwhelming sense of dread. Dark and brooding, it loomed over the twisted trees. The house seemed to be a living entity, its dark windows like eyes that watched your every move. The roof sagged under the weight of years of neglect, the shingles cracked and broken. The walls, once painted a bright, cheerful colour, were now faded and peeling, the wood beneath exposed to the elements. It was a place that had seen better days, a place that had once been filled with life and laughter, now reduced to a shadow of its former self. Its windows, like vacant eyes, watched, waited. There was an unsettling stillness about the house, as if it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The windows, dark and empty, seemed to follow you as you moved, their gaze unrelenting and unnerving. It was as if the house itself was alive, aware of your presence and not entirely pleased by it. The sense of being watched was overwhelming, a constant reminder that you were not alone. This was no ordinary house. It was a place steeped in history, a history that was dark and twisted. The walls seemed to whisper secrets. The floorboards creaked under the weight of unseen footsteps. It was a place where the past and present collided, where the line between reality and nightmare was blurred. The house was a living, breathing entity, a place that held onto its secrets with a fierce, unrelenting grip. This was a house of shadows and secrets. Every corner seemed to hold a story, every room a memory. The shadows danced and flickered, creating an ever-changing tapestry of light and dark. The secrets of the house were hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to venture inside. It was a place that demanded respect, a place that held the power to captivate and terrify in equal measure. A house where fear lived. It was a place that seemed to feed on the fear of those who entered, growing stronger with each passing moment. The very air seemed to vibrate with a sense of malevolence, a tangible force that pressed down on you, making it hard to breathe. The house was a living nightmare, a place where the line between reality and horror was blurred, where the past and present collided in a cacophony of fear and dread. Emily, Alex and Chris, three friends on a dare. Emily, the brave one, shivered, pulling her jacket tighter. Alex, the skeptical one, shoved his hands deep in his pockets. Chris, the scared one, wished he was anywhere but here. They stood at the edge of the woods, the haunted house looming before them. The dare was simple. Spend one night in the house. Easy, right? Wrong. This house had other plans. Sinister plans. The path to the house was overgrown and dark. Thorns tore at their clothes, snagging and pulling as if trying to hold them back. The dense foliage seemed to close in around them, making every step forward feel like a struggle against the very forest itself. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, adding to the oppressive atmosphere that surrounded them. Twigs snapped under their feet, each crack echoing through the silent woods like a warning. The sound seemed to grow louder with each step, as if the forest itself was trying to communicate its disapproval of their presence. Every now and then, a distant hoot of an owl or the rustle of unseen creatures added to the eerie ambience, making them jumpy and more aware of their surroundings.
Are you sure about this? The question hung in the air, filled with doubt and apprehension. It was clear that the decision to venture toward the old house was not unanimous, and the unease was palpable among the group. They exchanged nervous glances, each one silently questioning the wisdom of their choice.
Chris whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't like this. Something feels off." His words were barely audible, but the fear in his tone was unmistakable. It was as if he could sense an unseen presence watching them, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself.
Don't be such a chicken. The taunt was meant to lighten the mood, but it fell flat. The usual bravado that accompanied such dares was missing, replaced by a forced bravado that did little to mask the underlying fear. The words hung in the air, a weak attempt to dispel the growing tension.
Alex scoffed, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "We've come this far, we can't turn back now." His words were meant to be reassuring, but even he couldn't hide the uncertainty in his eyes. The old house loomed ahead, its dark silhouette a stark contrast against the moonlit sky. Emily, her eyes fixed on the house, said nothing. She felt a strange connection to the place, an inexplicable pull that she couldn't ignore. It was as if the house was calling to her, beckoning her to uncover its secrets. Her silence spoke volumes, and the others could sense her determination. She felt a pull towards it, a strange and unsettling curiosity. The closer they got, the stronger the feeling became. It was as if the house had a life of its own, drawing her in with an invisible force. She couldn't shake the feeling that something important awaited her inside, something that would change everything. They reached the front porch. The wood creaked ominously beneath their feet, each step sounding like a groan of protest. The porch was covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs, evidence of years of neglect. The windows were dark and foreboding, offering no glimpse of what lay inside. The air grew colder, heavier. A thick mist began to roll in, enveloping them in a shroud of fog. It was as if the house was trying to hide itself from the world, to keep its secrets buried. The temperature dropped noticeably, and they could see their breath forming in the air. The sense of foreboding grew stronger, and they knew that whatever awaited them inside, it would not be easily faced. The front door hung open, as if inviting them in. The house stood silent, its darkened windows like eyes, watching their every move. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. The group hesitated, feeling the weight of the house's eerie presence pressing down on them, or daring them to enter. The threshold seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a silent challenge to their courage. Each of them felt a chill run down their spine as they stared into the inky blackness beyond the door. The house seemed to whisper secrets, beckoning them closer, yet warning them to stay away.
"Hello?" The word hung in the air, fragile and uncertain. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what they would do next. The silence that followed was deafening, amplifying their fear and hesitation.
Emily called out, her voice echoing in the stillness. Silence. Then a low moan seemed to come from the depths of the house. It was a sound that sent shivers down their spines, a mournful wail that spoke of long-forgotten sorrows and unspoken fears. The moan grew louder, filling the night with its eerie resonance. It was followed by a creak, slow and deliberate, like footsteps on the stairs. Each step seemed to echo with a sinister intent, as if something unseen was making its way towards them. The creaking grew louder, more pronounced, and the group felt their hearts race in unison. Fear tightened its grip on them. Chris took a step back. Alex swallowed hard. Even Emily felt a shiver of apprehension. They exchanged nervous glances, each of them wondering if they should turn back. But something kept them rooted to the spot, a morbid curiosity mixed with a sense of dread. The house seemed to be alive, its very walls pulsating with a malevolent energy. They knew they had to make a choice, to face the unknown or to flee into the safety of the night. With a deep breath, Emily reached for the door handle. Her fingers trembled as they touched the cold metal, and for a moment she hesitated. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her, but she knew they couldn't stand there forever. She pushed the door open, and it creaked ominously, revealing the dark interior of the house. The inside of the house was even more foreboding than the outside. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like ghostly drapes, and the furniture was covered in a thick layer of dust. The moonlight cast eerie shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere of dread and unease. The group stepped inside, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. They huddled together, drawing strength from each other's presence. Every creak and groan of the old house seemed amplified, each sound a reminder of the unknown dangers that lurked within. They moved cautiously, their eyes darting around, trying to pierce the darkness that surrounded them. The house seemed to be watching, waiting for their next move. A flickering candle on a dusty table caught their attention. Its weak flame cast dancing shadows on the walls, adding to the eerie ambience. The light was a small comfort in the overwhelming darkness, but it also served as a reminder of how fragile their courage was. They knew they had to stay strong, to face whatever horrors the house had in store for them. They approached a closed door at the end of the hallway. The air grew colder and a sense of foreboding settled over them. With a determined look, Emily reached for the handle once more. This time there was no hesitation. She turned the handle and pushed the door open, revealing the unknown that awaited them beyond.
Do you hear that, narrator? They stepped inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. Cobwebs brushed against their faces like ghostly fingers.
Alex whispered, his eyes wide. A faint whispering seemed to come from the walls, whispering their names, mocking them, threatening them. The whispering grew louder, swirling around them, chilling them to the bone. The shadows in the house danced. They twisted and turned, taking on grotesque shapes. A cold spot settled over them, sucking the warmth from their bodies. The temperature plummeted. Chris whimpered, his eyes darting around the room. Alex's bravado was gone. He looked pale. The house sighed. A low groan echoed through the hallway, seeming to come from the very walls themselves. The floorboards creaked under their feet. Each step was a test of their courage. They had to get out, now. But something held them there, something dark and powerful. As they turned to flee, the front door slammed shut with a deafening boom. The sound echoed through the house, bouncing off the walls. They were trapped. Panic surged through them. Their hearts pounded in their chests. This was no game.
Let us out!
Emily screamed, pounding on the door. But the door wouldn't budge. It was as if it was sealed shut by an unseen force. And then, from the top of the stairs, a figure emerged from the darkness. Tall and shadowy, it glided towards them. Its eyes glowed with an eerie light.
You shouldn't have come here. This house is mine.
To be continued.